This is the new Renault Scenic E-Tech, and it's a new ultra-spacious electric family car with some really unique features. And the first thing I'd like to do in this video is showcase one of my favorites of those new features, removable wheel inserts. Now, what are these? What's the point? Why? Why can you do this? Why can you pull these out of the wheels? The answer is range and efficiency. Let's say you've got a 25-mile drive to do, but you wake up in the morning and you realize you've only got 20 miles of range because you've got to charge overnight. Well, you just click these puppies into place and all of a sudden, 100 miles per wheel-ish.
Support our Stop Burning Stuff Patreon and help us tackle misinformation about electric vehicles and clean energy.
Now then, plenty to talk about here. Welcome to what is fundamentally the second electric Renault of the Renaulution. That's what Renault calls this new dawn, this new era where it goes big on electric and sustainability. Of course, the first electric Renault of that era being the Megane E-Tech, which is a fantastic car. Numbers 3 and 4 we already know about. They are, ironically, the 4 and 5. Both we've seen as concepts, both will break cover as production-ready vehicles, maybe later this year, potentially early next year. It's all going on at Renault at the moment, and this is their biggest, their fanciest, their most spacious electric vehicle of this new lineup. And of course, the Scenic is a fairly significant name in the world of automotive because it was the Scenic along with the Renault Espace in the mid-90s that essentially invented the people carrier, the MPV. This is back before SUVs were the default mode of transport, and we were a little bit more innovative and clever with how we used space in car design. And I suppose one of my big questions with this thing today is, does it stay true to that fundamental concept of the original? Is this clever and innovative, or is it sort of just another big blobby SUV? Let's find out. Design-wise, I think the short summary would be big Megane. That's how I would describe the way this car looks. These headlights and these DRLs are recognizable from the Megane E-Tech. Fine with that, because it's a great looking car. But the key difference between the two is probably this rhombus pattern going on here where a grille would be. Not 100% sure how I feel with that. I think I'd have to live with it for a while before deciding. Coming around the side, a couple of things of note. Size-wise, just under 4.5 meters. It's comfortably a C-segment crossover thing, Kia Niro size, if that helps you at all. Not massive, and actually I don't mind when companies build these slightly bigger crossover type things when they also make smaller, more affordable models, and this will be the biggest and most expensive of the 4 Renaulution Renaults, with the Megane, the Renault 5 and the Renault 4 all coming in underneath it. And when that's the case, it doesn't actually offend me too much, the bigger crossover-y type things. Do like these wheel designs with the pulley-outy bits, lots of triangles and diamonds going on everywhere you look on the design of this vehicle, but without being too fussy or fiddly. Quite surprising to see such a big square bonnet on a Renault Scenic. They've never had those in the past. Every previous generation of this car, the bonnet has been a big swoopy thing, almost in a straight line with the windscreen. Very easy to draw, the Renault Scenic. So what's going on here? What's happening underneath here? Well, I think first of all, this is a design choice. It looks a bit more striking and muscular. And the other thing is, if you look at one of these cars with all the bodywork ripped off, you'll see that the way they've assembled this bespoke EV architecture is with all the EV gubbins and hardware up front. So you've got your motor mounted on the front axle, you've got the inverter on top of that and all the extra bits. And essentially what that enables them to do is have absolute freedom behind the front wheels. There is nothing going on, which in turn means big space inside, big space for the boot as well, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Of course, space is absolutely vital in this car. It's sort of what the Renault Scenic name was built on, so it needs to be seriously roomy even for its size. That will be helped by the fact that that bespoke EV architecture allows them to push those wheels right out, giving you even more room for your feetsies. Quick word on battery and motors. There's a couple of different options. You can have the same 60 kilowatt hour usable battery pack as the Megane E-Tech, or you can have a bigger 87 kilowatt hour pack. Respectively, those will give you 260 or 385 miles of range. That's a preliminary, not yet confirmed WLTP figure, but I imagine it's pretty close. No rare earth metals used in either the battery or the motor, by the way. Have that, Mr. Bean. And worth mentioning that something that really stood out for me when I spent some time with the Renault Megane E-Tech was its efficiency. It's a car where you can comfortably hit miles to the kilowatt hour in the high 3s, maybe even the 4s, under really great conditions. And it's likely that the same will be true for this Scenic because it uses the exact same motor, which Renault thinks they've actually made even more efficient in the time since. And the other reason for the impressive efficiency of the Megane is really good battery thermal management. They're really, really good at looking after the temperature of the battery and making sure it is just so for optimal performance. And again, the same is true with this car. The other advantage of great thermal management is charging. So this car charges at up to 150 kilowatts, but anyone who owns an EV knows that number barely means anything because some cars will say that, but only charge that fast for 2 seconds and then get really slow again. Renault reckons that they've gotten really good at ensuring it's a nice, big swooping arc so that the car gets to that speed very quickly and stays there very quickly, meaning less time spent sat at a charger. And this, by the way, this all speaks to a brand that's had a lot of practice with electric vehicles, if you ask me. Renault have made over 250,000 Zoes over the last decade or so, and that experience with electric vehicles is apparent when you look at their EV hardware, which is pretty damn good these days. So that's all just a very long-winded way of saying that this thing is likely to be above average in terms of efficiency compared to some of its rivals. If the range figures are to be believed, having run the numbers, it should be north of 4 miles to the kilowatt hour. But even if it's in the high 3s, you're looking at big range for both versions of this car. And then coming around the back, I mean, yeah, it's an okay looking thing. I'm a little bit disappointed by how sort of square and SUV-ish it looks from the outside. Normally I like it when car designers go for a sort of brawny, muscular design, but actually the Scenic is so famously swoopy and soft-edged that this feels a bit wrong to me. That being said, quite like these. These are interesting. They create a really clean brake as the air flows over the side of the car. That's an efficiency feature, but they are quite interesting to look at as well. Boots back here, 545 litres with the seats up. That is a pretty big boot for this segment of car. Huge space down here, giant lip, but I strongly suspect that this will come with a false floor once it's all done and dusted. I will say that that's not an especially big opening. I wish I brought my tape measure with me, but there's quite a lot of car either side of that, especially considering that all the EV hardware is up front. Let's see if there's more room inside for your head and feet. Now then, interior of the Renault Scenic E-Tech. This for me is where this car comes alive. This is where all the really good stuff is at. And I would summarize this interior thusly. Tons of space, lots of sustainable goodness, and a few really great features. But first things first, let's do the screens and the infotainment system. I'll keep it short, it's brilliant. It's largely the same as it was in the Renault Megane E-Tech. It's powered by Google, so it's crisp and responsive, and the voice command actually works, and it just sails through my key test for infotainment, which is, can I prod around it for 60 seconds and figure it out? And the answer is yes. It's got Android Auto, it's got Apple CarPlay, the icons are big and easy to hit, it's bright and colourful without being jarring, and actually there are a couple of fun features they've added. There's a safety coach which will rank your driving on a number of metrics and then offer some helpful tips on how you might drive more safely if you're interested in that. Space in here is, well, ample. Quite frankly, I mean, you would hope so in the front. I've managed to get the seat adjusted exactly where I want it. I'm actually quite low down in the cabin, which is quite nice. Quite a reclined driving position instead of that kind of super high up experience that you get from some more high riding SUVs. Steering wheel comes all the way out so I can get it exactly how I want it. Interior storage, there is loads of it. I'm told it's a segment leading 38.7 litres of interior storage. It's just everywhere you look. There's a little pocket here in the door, there's a big one down there, here's a little tray for your coins, there's your glove box in there, no surprises, of course. Bespoke architecture means flat floor, so what they've done with that space is fit a huge storage bin here, and you can adjust these puppies to make it however you want it, to have 2 cup holders or just one huge tray, wireless phone charger, lots of little nooks and crannies for all your bits and bobs. Glass roof. This comes as standard on the Renault Scenic E-Tech, and they call it the solar bay roof. So called because it has a fancy party piece. If I pull this back, it doesn't open, but the glass goes from opaque to transparent. And you can have the whole roof see-through, you can have the whole roof opaque, or you can have just the front half one thing and the back half the other, or vice versa. Now, what on earth is the point of this? Well, there's a few things. First of all, on a hot day, it keeps the cabin nice and cool, and indeed, however you have it set, when you turn the car off and get out of it, it goes to the full opaque mode to keep your car cool in the morning sunshine. But in addition to that, it saves on a lot of componentry. Think about the big sliding screen that you would otherwise need. That requires a motor and a piece of fabric and rails, and it's also eating into your headroom. This, Renault reckons, affords you an extra 3 centimetres of headroom, which, when you're me, is much appreciated. Generally speaking, I'm just a fan of the aesthetic of this cockpit. It's not groundbreaking, it's not ultra minimalist or futuristic, it just looks nice. And the focus is on the excellent screens and this very pretty steering wheel in front of you. And then pretty much everything you touch is to some degree recycled. So seat covers 100% recycled. I think the dash uses plant resin in part. Rugs are largely recycled. You can again have repurposed wood in your doors here. And in fact, the metal, the aluminium in the doors and the bonnet, that is 80% recycled. The flipping glass in the sunroof is 50% recycled. Renault not messing about, and that's actually just the tip of the sustainability iceberg. I'll tell you more on that in just a moment, but first of all, backseat jack test. Welcome to the party piece of the Renault Scenic E-Tech. C-segment, crossover SUV type thing, less than 4.5 meters long. And look at me back here. That is room. That is room. I don't know that I've sat in a car this size that affords this much space to its rear occupants. This is not a case of I'd be happy for a short to medium length journey. I'd be happy back here till the cows came home. That seat is all the way back in my silly driving position, and I really am perfectly happy back here. And again, I am really thanking this special glass roof for those extra 3 centimeters of headroom, because it does make a big difference. Flat floor, lots of footroom, couple of USB ports down there, and we've got to talk about this. This is what Renault calls the Ingenious armrest. Bold name. Why is it called that? Well, it's got a couple of cup holders. That's fairly standard practice. There's a couple of USB charge ports, a little tray to keep your phone while it's charging. Smuggler's hole back there. Smuggler's hold? Smuggler's hole. Smuggler's hole might be something different. Never mind. Look at this. This is where the ingeniousness comes in. Because what we have here are the coolest cup holders of all time. These little rubber extendy bits are for, look at this, look. Flipping phone holder. I can sit here and mindlessly scroll TikTok while my parents do all the driving up front. I can sit here and watch a film, or I can put a tablet across the two and watch a film with a friend. This would be life-changing if you were 11 years old on a long car trip. Big fan of that. That feels very Renault Scenic as well. What do we think then, people? New Renault Scenic E-Tech. First impressions, do let us know down in the comments. What do you think about this thing? I think that some of you, like me, are going to share a sense that it's a bit of a shame that this doesn't look more like the old swoopy Renault Scenics, and that it actually looks so much like a sort of generic crossover SUV type thing. But that small gripe aside, I think what you're left with, once you get over that, is a very impressive, big, spacious family car. These guys are getting a lot right at the moment. Very practical, very roomy interior, fantastic, easy to live with user interface, and bespoke, very impressively efficient EV powertrain. It's looking good for Renault, I would say, and I'm looking forward to getting this thing out on the road early next year. But in the meantime, please do make sure to like and subscribe, and if you have been, thanks for watching.